Support for Medicare Man, remembering Dan Perrino and Medicare 7, 8, or 9, comes from the law firm of Thomas Mabern Hoy, LLP, prepared for the challenges of today and the changes of tomorrow. The Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District, gotta get there. Information at 384-8188. And the Academy on Capitalism and Limited Government Foundation, a not-for-profit corporation that supports scholarly research on free markets, entrepreneurship, limited government, and peace.
New Orleans-style jazz played by old guys who play it hot, play it young, and it's tons of fun. That's Medicare, and in many respects, it's Dan.
He was Medicare. We keep getting back to that. He was Medicare 7, 8, or 9, really, in every way.
And there was such a presence about him. There's only one Dan Perrino.
You don't think of Medicare without Danny, and you don't think of Danny without thinking of Medicare.
When the wagon starts with that tailgate down, march to that parade all around the town. Hear that trombone man when he blows his chops. He never ever stops till he reaches the top. 'Twas a long time ago, I was in Martine, march that parade. That was my dream. So when the wagon starts with that tailgate down, march that parade all around the town. Mo on trombone.
Carter. Thank you, Mo. Johnny Heitler on the piano. Thank you, Mo.
In 1969, we had a concern about the fact that students and faculty somehow or another were not talking to one another. So we started a program in the South Lounge, a very informal program called Dialogue, where we got some faculty members and students together to talk about anything that the students wanted to talk about. And one day when the session was going on, John O'Connor, our trumpet player, said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, we're having a session called Dialogue in order to get students and faculty to, in a relaxed situation, talk to one another." And then he said,
what we need here is a little jazz, you know, to grab their attention, something that's carefree and happy at this point.
Our last number in the program was When the Saints Go Marching In, and it ended up being a very happy kind of session. And the Daily Illini reporter came up to me afterwards and he said, what do you call your band? And I said, well, first of all, it's not my band, just a group of volunteer faculty members getting together to play. And I said, we don't have a name. I said, this is the first time we played. And he said, how many are in the group? I said, gosh, I don't know, 7, 8, or 9, depending on how many showed up.
The name Medicare came about when Stan Ron, who came up on the scene about the same time and was singing and playing his clarinet, said, well, this is no band, we just are together, you know, we're just a bunch of old guys, retirees, or some of us are, you know, Medicare type.
So the next day in the Daily Liner front page, it said, Medicare 7, 8, or 9 play jazz for students in the South Lounge. So we kept the name.
Solo, Bob Connor.
He's the one that made it happen. And somebody had to get 7 or 8 musicians there at a certain place at a certain time, and they couldn't all be saxophone players. And you had to have the right 7 or 8 or 9.
He was kind of legendary for sending out letters, and for every gig, 2 or 3 at least.
Danny sent out more letters. You wouldn't believe it. Sometimes we get 4 or 5 letters for one job. Just a reminder of this job.
Nothing to chance. So here again, he had no secretary, and he was not good at delegating because it was just him. I mean, he had to know that this was going to be done right, and he was the captain of the ship.
Dan knew what he wanted. He would write for the band. He'd tell you how he wanted it played. He could arrange it.
But it was never about him. As a matter of fact, one of the things he did you don't see very often, every time someone took a solo, however small, he would say their name and kind of lead the applause for the people to give acknowledgement to the gentleman on the stage he was performing with.
He was very inclusive. He tried to get all of the people he knew that might fit into a certain situation and into, well, like when we played here, he would have, it wouldn't be just one set band. He'd have people coming in and off the stage. He wanted to get everybody in on the action.
I think I heard the figure of somewhere between 150 and 200 people had performed with Medicare over the years. And that wouldn't surprise me, guys coming up, sitting in, that sort of thing.
I don't know how he did it when he came together for the big shows that we did at Cranert. And I know the band played here at WALL a number of times, just figuring out who could play on the job and make sure you have a clarinet or a tenor sax or soprano and make a trumpet and a pianist and to cover all that and try to keep everybody happy. It was just a phenomenal job, and it took a person with Dan's kind heart and intelligence to do it.
So the talent was there, the generosity was there, and Dan's leadership. The man could never have developed or continued without Dan, I can assure you.
Those of you who claim to be over 35 or 40 will recognize the name Bunny Berrigan. And Bunny Berrigan, a great trumpet player and a great band leader, had this tune, this next tune for his theme song. And again, I'm sure that you will remember it. I Can't Get Started With You, and it'll start out with Jeff and Greg with the opening portion of it, and then the others will join in. We're going to have Morgan Powell on trombone, and who else? I guess that's it here. I Can't Get Started. Jeff and Hank. Morgan Powell on trombone. get started. Let's get started with you. This next one always seems to be a crowd pleaser. I'm not exactly sure why, but it's kind of a barn burner, and I think some of you will remember it. It's called "Oh How I Wish I Was in Peoria," and it's gonna start out with a little bit of a tom-tom drum introduction. You ready back there? Shoot.
You can even pick a morning gloria right off the sidewalk of Peoria. Oh, how I wish that I was in Peoria, Peoria tonight.
Woody, it's all yours. Thank you, Woody. Hello. Johnson. Thank you, Carl. A walking bass by Dan Perrino and Tony.
Dan was definitely a connector. He always noticed where there could be really positive changes made between certain people and really looked at their strengths and kind of who they were as people, you know. So I think he was very intentional about those connections that he made.
So the idea of using music to do that was instinctive to Dan. Dan's life was music, and that was his entree to the world. So for him to use music to bring people together was only natural. It was so understandable.
He was so natural when he spoke. He was honest, funny, witty, and casual. There was never, I mean, he may be dressed up, but there was always that at-home feeling with Dan, and there was such a presence about him. People person. I mean, he knew so many people, and he cared about knowing them.
You couldn't go anywhere with Dan without everybody stopping and saying hi and this or that. And Marge used to eat a lot of meals alone, I think, because Dan would be going to tables and saying hi to people. The cell phone was a great invention for Dan because he used to have to go to a real phone. The first thing, wherever he was traveling, he'd have to go and make a phone call.
He was the master of the phone. If there was a phone near, I think if he would see a phone booth someplace, he might stop the car and get out and go use the phone. That's just the way he was. He was and when cell phones came out, oh boy, that was dangerous because he must have been on the phone constantly. He loved it, and I have to say, I loved talking with him too.
When our kids were little, they liked to be on the telephone also. So we decided, okay, we'll get a children's line. So we did, and of course, as it ended up, Danny had both lines, and the kids still didn't have a telephone. So he would give out both numbers to anybody that he wanted to call him, so they could call him on either line, and the kids never got their own telephone line.
No matter where he went across the country, he would always see somebody he knew, a former student or an acquaintance or an Army buddy.
Walk down the quad with Danny sometime. Walk down the quad. It'd take you 45 minutes to get from the auditorium to the Union. Hey, how you doing? Hey, oh, hi. Oh, there's this guy over here. And just never stopped. It was just unbelievable.
And so he would introduce you to these people. He would introduce you to everyone he came across. And in that way, there was a connection. And he would always explain what I did and what they did, and try to make a connection some way. So his story about me was different depending on who he was talking with.
So wherever we went, it was amazing. He knew people of all ages, and everybody loved him.
I mean, he was the most personable man I think I've ever known. He was totally generous to everyone.
And he just, until the very end, wanted to be with people and to help communicate with people.
Gordy Wilson, a little bit of gospel piano there. Gordy Wilson. Thank you, Gordy. Jack May. Jack Ray, thank you, Jack. Joe Stadlin. Thank you, Joe. Mo Carter. Mo Carter. And the bass player that we don't hear enough of, Don Percival. Dialogue between father and son. Wagner with his brand new Mute. Jerry Wagner.
The students loved him. He was a father figure, an uncle, a dear friend. He was the one administrator that they knew respected them, didn't judge them for their long hair or scruffy appearance or political views.
And he also worked well with kids of all ages. Even into his 80s, he would go over and work with the jazz band. They didn't have a jazz band at Urbana back as long as the Central and some of the Champaign high schools did. And Dan would meet with them tirelessly to talk about style and working with them. He never talked down to students regardless of their age or their level.
Dan was an incredible educator in the sense that he valued the audience and he also valued the performer. And he never let either of those, be out of balance because he knew they were really both important. And I noticed that as he was working on shows with me, he would make sure that the dialogue was interactive and he would make sure it was interesting enough for everybody. And then he would also make sure that the music was the highest quality that it could be. And that's something that taught me a lot as a music teacher.
I just think he saw the good in the moment, in his time, of getting kids involved in music at an early age. I think that's really was his biggest premise, and particularly as he got older. Because it's such a long process, dealing with music. It's a lifelong process that you never master. And Dan understood that. And I know he understood the fact that the earlier students got involved, the more chance they had to be successful in music, whatever field they chose in music.
Well, he would just give you an opportunity, a chance. I mean, you didn't have to be the best guy initially, especially. I mean, you might flub. I did. I remember playing Melody of Love, some high school band trip, and probably forgot right in the middle of the tune what I was supposed to be playing. But he never gave up on you.
I mean, when I think of all the young people that and to his home, and his wife Marge, so gracious, because they would have students over constantly, either music related or student maybe problems someone was having, or they didn't feel comfortable. It was an ethnic situation. They would have them stay at their home. Oh no, they went beyond, both of them.
He inspired me to be very knowledgeable about my craft in the technical sense, but in a bigger way, he inspired me to get to know my students and families, that relationships would carry you further ever than anything you could know, that, you know, teaching is more than just being in the classroom. It's being, and it makes me emotional talking about it, but, you know, he's someone I aspire to be like in every sense of who he was.
It was all about the music, the people, making connections, and making the music better every time you tried to play it.
To see Dan really proud is what we all wanted. That's all you wanted.
John O'Connor and Barry Wagner and Sugar Blues. Thank you, John.
They were the greatest ambassadors, and I call them the greatest ambassadors, and Dan was behind all that Illinois ever had.
The university meant so much to Dan. He was truly loyal to the university, more so than anyone I know, I think. And so we'd go out on these trips, and people would, they'd want more. They'd just come back. You know?
We had wonderful trips, and Dan was so good at that. Always a gentleman, and just knew how to lead the group. We were a family, really, very close, and very respectful. So it worked.
Well, they were fun. I mean, they were fun. They were quick. There was a real sense of humor there.
And the audiences always left happy. I mean, you could see it. And that was a thrill all by itself.
I often got to go see Medicare perform, and I love them. That's a group that I never wanted the music to stop.
They were really very good musicians. They really knew what they were doing, and it's hard not to be taken by that.
It's really good music. I mean, the construction of the forms, the lyrics, the melodies. I mean, I play now, and people will mention something about me having played with Medicare 7, 8, or 9. Oh, yeah, you know. And that's really been why I'm still playing.
It was always musically rewarding in some way, and often in many ways. And you can't say that about a lot of groups. As a musician,
that you experience. It's very unusual.
To me, they were so knowledgeable about the music, and they had actually seen a lot of the key players, Count Basie and Benny Goodman and Stan Kenton, and they'd seen everybody because they'd grown up with it.
I mean, we got out there for fun. The money was rarely there, and when it was there, it was minimal. But no one cared. No one cared. It was just having a chance to make people feel good. And, the audience was always be clapping along and enjoying it. It was just wonderful.
Switching to bass here, Armand. Nice hand for Woody.
Hindustan. Duke Ellington wrote this next piece here. And Duke Ellington, I think you probably will all agree, is considered one of the masters of jazz, one of the all-time greats. And it's a very lovely piece called Come Sunday.
I think when Danny started the Medicare and really got into it, became a real life focus for him. Put a lot of energy into it.
It was part of his heart and soul. I'm convinced of that.
I don't think anybody in the community would ever think of Dan without music. There's just that element. And for me, it's exclusively it. I never associate him without it.
He gave people a chance to perform music and grow musically.
His excitement for learning and for people was just infectious, and it was contagious to be around him because you couldn't help but be excited about what you were doing. He was incredibly passionate about kids and about young musicians carrying on music that was from the past. I think that was very important to him. And he was just also really excited about people enjoying music, whether it was in a jazz setting or a gospel music setting. He appreciated all music and really loved to pass that love on to other people.
He never stopped. And it was his energy never slowed down. Never.
And my daughter was sitting where you're sitting one night, and she said, "Mom," she said, "how could one person do all of that? He was just my dad."
Dan was everything to a lot of people.
Well, I often thought that the world ought to have about 100 Dannys. Wouldn't hurt a bit.
He was just the kindest person I'd ever known, and I tried. I'm not saying I succeeded, but I tried to adopt that in my own dealings with people because it's just a better way to live life. It's a better way to live with people around you.
I really think he's one of the greatest guys I've ever known, and I've known a lot of them.
Just talk to anyone that he's worked with. I mean, I don't know a person that says a bad thing about the good things that Dan has done. I mean,
I think those of us that knew of Dan or had the pleasure and privilege of working with Dan know that his love and his passion and his genuine acceptance of all people was incredibly vital to the work that we do as either educators or musicians. And I think people beyond my time will know who Dan Perrino was, because I think most of us will continue his legacy and will speak of his name with just great admiration and love.
And he's just an incredible person. And I think that the legacy he's going to leave is one of love, understanding, and support.
Dan will never be forgotten here. No, absolutely not.
It's impossible to end any kind of Dixieland performance without this good old classic, When the Saints Go Marching In. Greg?
And when that sun begins to shine, oh, when that sun begins to shine, well, I want to be in that number. Oh, when the sun begins to shine, and when this band begins to play, and when this band
destiny has made this world a better place to be.